Chosen ones, shit hit the fan. You got these people suicidal with what you know. The truth you carry has shattered their entire world. Every secret they tried to bury, every lie they swore would never see the light of day, has been exposed. They paid to have you silenced, manipulated, or even destroyed. But you're still here, shining brighter than ever. Now they're crumbling under the weight of their own sins. The knowledge you hold is too powerful, too undeniable, and it's driving them to their breaking point. They can't sleep, they can't think, and they can't escape the consequences of their actions. They tried to erase you, but now they're the ones trying to disappear. The truth they swore would never come out is suffocating them, and you didn't have to do a thing. Secrets are out, money changed hands, and now, let's just say, they're not handling it well. They will call it madness, they will call it betrayal, but the names they give their own undoing do not matter. You know the truth. Their collapse is not the work of an enemy, but the consequence of their own making. They set the stage for their inevitable reckoning with every secret they buried, every silence they enforced, every desperate grasp for power that was never truly theirs. Now, they cannot sleep without the weight of it crushing them, cannot speak without the taste of it, poisoning their words. No punishment could be more absolute than this. A truth so loud, so undeniable, that it drowns out every last illusion they once clung to. Drop a comment. The unseen fights for me. If every trap set against you collapsed before it could spring, every lie crumbled before it could stick, and every attack reversed before it could land. They can't outrun what's already inside them. The lies they swore to uphold now press against their ribs, turning their own breath into a weapon against them. Sleep is no refuge. It only magnifies the weight of what they buried. Their own mind, once a sanctuary of control, has turned against them, replaying their worst sins in an endless loop. They hear things that aren't there, see faces that no longer exist, feel the presence of those they tried to erase. Truth is not a blade. It's a slow, grinding force that strips them down to nothing, leaving only raw, unfiltered guilt. And it never stops pressing. Some retreat into silence, hoping that if they refuse to acknowledge reality, it might forget them. Others lash out, grasping at whatever power remains, tearing at those who once stood beside them, convinced betrayal lurks in every shadow. A few seek to erase themselves entirely, believing that if they disappear, so will their past. But truth is not bound by flesh or existence. It lingers in the spaces they once occupied, etched into the memories of those they deceived. Even their absence cannot silence the weight of what they did. They are not being hunted. They are being cornered by the echoes of their own choices. You were never the threat. You never had to lift a weapon, never had to break their world with force. All you did was stand with the truth, and that alone shattered them. The illusion they built was never meant to withstand scrutiny, never designed to face the light. And now, as their foundations collapse, as their desperate grasp on control slips further from reach, they come to understand the one thing they always feared. Nothing destroys like the undeniable, relentless force of reality itself. Every move against you was calculated, funded, and executed with precision. They gathered in secret, whispering strategies like war generals, convinced that their reach was absolute. They bribed, they blackmailed, they fabricated illusions, so convincing that even those closest to you hesitated. Every shadow they cast was designed to swallow you whole. Every lie they spread meant to discredit your existence. But the unseen does not answer to the corrupt. Every plot unraveled before it could take root. Every hand raised against you found itself struck down by forces beyond their understanding. They thought they controlled the game, but they were playing on a board they never truly owned. Some turned to darkness, weaving spells and summoning forces they barely understood, believing that power could be stolen, that fate could be rewritten with enough blood and sacrifice. But they only summoned their own undoing. The laws of the universe are not swayed by desperation, nor do they bend to mortal will. The same rituals meant to erase you rebounded with crushing force, leaving them haunted by the very entities they'd tried to command. Doors slammed shut where there were once openings, and those who conspired against you found themselves abandoned by the same hands that once fed them. It was never about whether you would fall, it was about when they would realize they had already lost. You weren't spared by luck, and you weren't saved by chance. Protection was woven into your very existence, a barrier no wealth, no power, no dark force could penetrate. They will never understand why every trap collapsed before it could. Spring, why every assassin's blade turned on its wielder, why every attempt to erase you only strengthened your presence. They called it failure, miscalculation, bad fortune. But you know the truth. Some forces do not negotiate. Some names are written in places no mortal hand can erase. And when the decree is set, no amount of money, no depth of corruption, no desperate act of sorcery can alter what has already been sealed. Revelation is not a gift, it is an obligation. Knowledge does not rest. It demands to be used, to be spoken, to be acted upon. There is no retreat from it, no way to unknow what has been revealed. Those who receive it are marked, not for their comfort, but for their endurance. The truth does not make life easier, it makes it heavier. There will be moments when silence feels like survival, when denial seems like the easier path. But you were not built for ease. You were built to carry what others cannot, to stand where others collapse. To whom much is given, much is required, according to Luke chapter 12 verse 48. That is not a promise of reward, but a declaration of responsibility. Their own mind is the executioner now, tightening its grip with every passing second. The illusion of control they built is fracturing, and they don't know where the cracks will spread next. Every interaction with you feels like a test they are destined to fail. The weight of their own deception sits heavy in their throat, turning words into liabilities, movements into confessions. They overanalyze your silence, dissect your every expression, trying to decode what you might already know. Their paranoia is no longer about you. It's about them, about their own inability to keep the truth buried. And once doubt takes root, it grows like an infection, consuming everything. It isn't what you say that destroys them. It's what you don't say. The restraint, the measured pauses, the way you move without hesitation, these unravel them faster than any accusation could. Their fear of exposure is so absolute that they are doing the work for you, unraveling in real time. They start seeing ghosts of their own making, interpreting coincidences as consequences. Conversations turn into traps, interactions feel like interrogations. They double back on their own lies, not because you confronted them, but because they can no longer tell what you see and what you don't. The enemy was never external, it was the truth sitting just beneath the surface, waiting to break free. You're not even watching them, but they think you are. The weight of guilt is heavier than any set of eyes. You don't need to chase them. Their own thoughts are already hunting them down. They wake up at odd hours, sweat clinging to their skin, convinced they've been found out. They avoid certain places, certain people, certain topics, desperately trying to outrun something that was always there. But truth does not die in the dark. It waits. It festers. And no matter how deep they try to bury it, the fear of exposure will always be louder than silence. Drop a comment. I was built for this. If the truth you carry is heavier than most can handle, if the path ahead demands resilience others lack, and if no amount of pressure can shake the purpose etched into your very existence. The obsidian inner order was forged for those who refuse to live in the shadows of mediocrity. This isn't your standard mastermind. It's a crucible for those who dominate their reality and demand excellence. Every week, over 450 members dive into raw, unfiltered sessions that deliver the exact blueprint for crushing your goals and claiming what's yours. Every strategic session is recorded and stored in our vault, ready for you to access whenever you need to fuel your next conquest. This isn't about motivation, it's about domination. Our private Discord rises above basic networking. It's a fortress where apex performers trade the kind of knowledge that separates the rulers from the ruled. Here, real power players connect and share strategies that stay behind closed doors. You'll get immediate access to modern manifestation mechanics, an arsenal of proven strategies that turn vision into reality. Plus, you'll get exclusive interviews with high-level operators and video content so potent it makes the status quo tremble. This isn't just a membership, it's your ascension to power. Stop watching from the sidelines. Your seat at the table of titans awaits. The link is in the description below. This was never a coincidence. The precision of each strike, the coordination behind every obstacle, the way systems move against you with invisible hands, it all points to something deeper, something structured. These aren't the fumblings of chance. These are calculated efforts to erase, discredit, and isolate. The reach of their interference extends beyond what the average mind can comprehend. Government surveillance, financial strangulation, carefully placed betrayals from those you once trusted. They manipulate laws, rewrite narratives, engineer circumstances to break you. But their calculations fail to account for one thing, the unseen force that shields you. They recognize patterns in data, but not in fate. They strategize, but they do not understand divine law. They orchestrated a war against you in places you cannot see. Some battles were meant to unfold in courtrooms, others in backrooms, and the most insidious within the minds of those you once called allies. They planted doubts, rearranged truths, fabricated accusations with chilling efficiency. But no matter how deep they dug the pit, you never fell in. Every carefully planned destruction collapsed under its own weight. Every deception became an exposed thread leading back to them. Their own hands sealed their downfall because they refused to acknowledge the force that kept pulling you from the brink. They underestimated your protection. That was their first and final mistake. They don't understand why their plans fail, why their traps never spring the way they intend. They call it miscalculation, bad timing, unforeseen error. But you know better. Their entire operation is a paradox. They are hunting something that cannot be caught, fighting an enemy that does not fight back, waging a war that was lost before it began. They did not anticipate resistance that does not retaliate, a force that does not operate by their rules. They thought power rested in their networks, their influence, their control. But real power cannot be bribed, threatened, or dismantled. What shields you is beyond reach, beyond compromise, beyond destruction, and that is why they will never win. They thought they could manipulate reality itself, bending fate to serve their agenda. But the laws governing existence do not operate on deception. They played with forces they never understood, believing their power was absolute. They burned bridges to isolate you, only to find themselves standing on sinking ground. The betrayals they orchestrated come back as knives in their own backs. The lies they told gain a pulse of their own, circling back in ways they never predicted. Their whispers become shouts, their secrets spill, their once loyal followers scatter like frightened prey. The harder they fight against the reversal, the faster it accelerates. It does not stop, does not slow, does not negotiate. Their sleepless nights are not the work of paranoia, but of knowing that their fate is sealed, that the very shadows they cast now move in ways they cannot control. They conditioned the world to dismiss the unseen, to brand those who recognize it as delusional, to weaponize doubt against those who see too much. They crafted systems that thrive on distraction, numbing the senses so the truth remains buried beneath noise. But you never lost sight. The attacks weren't random, the pressure wasn't coincidence, it was designed to break you before you could awaken to your full capacity. They knew who you were before you did, and their attempts to suppress you were not about your past, but your future. But pressure does not destroy the chosen, it forges them. The very force meant to silence you sharpened your instincts, refined your gifts, and forced you into a level of awareness they never wanted you to reach. Gifts emerge in adversity. The weight they placed on you was meant to suffocate, but instead it unlocked the abilities buried deep within. You started noticing shifts before they happened, reading intentions before words were spoken, sensing unseen forces moving through the spaces around you. The more they pushed, the stronger your discernment became. What they mocked as paranoia was nothing more than clarity sharpening under fire. And now, the same voices that ridiculed you are scrambling to understand what you've become. Their skepticism is cracking under the weight of undeniable proof. Things you once warned them about are now unfolding in ways they can no longer ignore. The world isn't ready for the chosen ones to awaken, but it's happening anyway. They cannot stop what has already begun. Their denial will not shield them from reality, and their mockery will not undo what has been set in motion. They will watch as those they dismissed rise beyond the limits they imposed. They will witness the unraveling of illusions they once called truth, and they will come to understand, too late, too unprepared, that the power they tried to suppress was never theirs to control. Knowing before others see, feeling what has not yet taken shape, sensing what hides beneath polished words and controlled expressions. This is not an advantage, it is a responsibility. Clairvoyance, spiritual discernment, prophetic visions, these are not abstract concepts, but forces that manifest in real time. They sharpen under pressure, intensify through trials, and refuse to be ignored. You see what is coming before it arrives, and that alone changes everything. The weight of premonition is not in the vision itself, but in the knowing who will betray, knowing what is being plotted, knowing the disaster before it unfolds, unable to explain how. And yet, those without sight call it paranoia. They dismiss what they do not understand, unaware that the very thing they doubt is what has shielded you time and time again. There is no peace in knowing too much. The mind does not rest when it has learned to detect what others overlook. Conversations are no longer just words. They are layered with unspoken intentions. A shift in energy, a hesitation, an irregular pause, all reveal more than any confession ever could. The struggle is not in perception, but in restraint, in the decision of what to acknowledge and what to let pass. The isolation is inevitable. People trust what they see, not what you sense. The burden is carrying truths that cannot be spoken. Standing at the crossroads of destiny and free will, knowing that some things must unfold as they are written, even when the warnings are clear. Your intuition isn't paranoia, it's protection. The mind is trained to doubt what it cannot measure, but your awareness does not come from logic alone. It is an extension of something greater. It sharpens like a blade each time it is proven right. Every time danger was avoided, every time deception was exposed, every time you sensed what others missed, the proof was undeniable. The struggle is not in believing your own gift, but in enduring the disbelief of others. Yet none of that changes the truth. What you have is not an accident. It was given for a reason, and whether the world understands it or not, it remains unshaken, undeniable, and undefeated. There comes a moment when deception collapses under its own weight, when the illusion can no longer sustain itself, when truth forces its way through the cracks. You were never waiting for the right time. The right time was waiting for you. The forces that once silenced voices now tremble as they rise in unison. What was whispered in secrecy is now spoken with authority. The ripples become waves, and waves become an unstoppable force. Those who spent lifetimes constructing their fragile empires of lies watch in horror as their foundation crumbles beneath them. They assumed control over perception, but divine law dictates when truth must surface. And now, no power on earth can suppress it. This is not just exposure, it is reckoning. The moment one chosen one speaks, the entire system begins to shake. Revelation does not come in whispers, it arrives like a flood, washing away everything that cannot withstand its force. Those who thrived in deception, who wove darkness into every structure of influence, now find themselves unable to escape their own creation. They scramble to contain what cannot be stopped, to discredit those who can no longer be silenced. But truth multiplies. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Once spoken, it cannot be unheard. There is no defense against divine timing. The system they controlled is now a battlefield they cannot navigate. You were meant to awaken at this exact moment. Nothing is by accident. There were no delays, no missteps, no coincidences. You did not come into awareness too soon or too late. You were aligned with an unfolding greater than any blueprint they tried to enforce. What is happening now was always meant to happen. Every attempt to delay it, every effort to derail it, every force that worked to suppress it only ensured that when the moment arrived, it would be undeniable. This is that moment, and nothing will stop what has already begun. Their grip on power was always an illusion, propped up by manipulation, deception, and control. They operated in secrecy, weaving lies into reality, convinced that their influence would never wane. But now, their authority is crumbling beneath them. Every scheme, every calculated attack, every desperate attempt to erase you has failed. They tried to eliminate, to discredit, to isolate, but nothing worked. Now, they are the ones watching their own world collapse, their own names dragged through the dirt, their own carefully constructed defenses turned against them. The ones they controlled no longer listen. The system they built no longer protects them. Their terror is no longer of you, it is of the reckoning they can no longer outrun. They thought their reach extended beyond consequence, that no force existed beyond their control. But divine law does not answer to wealth or status. Every lie they told is now a weight around their neck. Every betrayal they orchestrated returns to them with force. They see the chosen rising, standing untouched despite everything thrown at them, and it shakes them to the core. They thought power was in destruction, in control, in silencing, but they were wrong. True power is surviving everything meant to break you and remaining unmoved. Your mere survival is their greatest defeat. Nothing humiliates them more than the sight of you still standing. They played every card, pulled every string, twisted every narrative, and yet here you are, untouched, unshaken, undefeated. That is the final, undeniable proof of their failure, and nothing terrifies them more. You were never just another target. Every attempt to break you, every strategy to silence you, every calculated move to erase your presence has failed, publicly, undeniably, and permanently. What they once dismissed as luck, they now recognize as something beyond their control. The warnings have been written in consequences, etched into the downfall of those who came against you. Their mistakes serve as a lesson for the rest. Interference is a cost no one is willing to pay. You do not command fear, you command respect, enforced not by threats, but by the undeniable force that walks with you. They no longer speak recklessly, no longer conspire in the open. There are no more whispers of how to remove you, only hushed reminders of what happened to the last ones who tried. Your presence is a reminder that some battles are unwinnable, some names untouchable, some forces beyond human reach. The war they waged against you became their undoing, and now no one dares to repeat their mistakes. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't have to. The weight of their own actions buried them before you ever had to lift a hand. Now, their silence is your confirmation, their absence, your proof. Speak. Reveal what was done in the dark. Let those who have walked through the same fire know they are not alone. Your survival is not just your victory. It is a declaration that cannot be ignored. There is power in testimony, in truth, in refusing to be erased. Share your story. Let the world know what happens when the chosen refuse to fall.